So this is going to be my last video of 2025. It might already even be 2026 for some of you by the time that you're watching this, but I wanted to make this video on a topic that I didn't really know exactly how to kind of put together a video to really get my thoughts across on what it could mean, but I'm going to try to do my best inside of this video here and really just kind of leave it as like the last kind of topic because it's not really like the best topic or like the most hyper exciting topic, but I just want to kind of leave it here to kind of close off 2025 and then start 2026 with a bunch of fresh videos on other things. And what I really want to talk about here though is Pokemon DLC. So it's been a few weeks since the Mega Dimension DLC has come out for Pokemon Legends ZA, and I've played through it and stuff, but I didn't really know exactly how to make a video on it because there are things that I want to talk about, but also information with other things in regards to what this DLC could mean for the future. So I don't know if I should have two videos on it or just one video going over my thoughts on it and then having another video going on that, but I feel like I don't really have too many things to talk about in terms of the DLC itself to make like an entire review video, but it kind of does lean into other topics that I want to talk about with what this could mean for the future. So I'm essentially just going to be combining everything into this one video here to close off the year, and that's really kind of what I want to talk about. Now, if you've been following the discussion online for how people feel about the Mega Dimension DLC and their thoughts on it, you might have seen that the reception to this DLC has kind of been all over the place, where some people are liking it and they're saying that it's pretty fun, they're liking the challenge and the other aspects that the DLC has to offer, but there's also people saying that they're not really liking this DLC that much either, they're not having a ton of fun with it, and that they don't feel like it's worth it. So I kind of want to talk real quick about just some of my impressions with the DLC also. Now really the first thing about this DLC that kind of disappointed me as soon as we pretty much got the first gameplay reveal for it was when we found out that you're essentially just going to be in the same area again with Lumio City, as this DLC is taking place in something known as Hyperspace Lumios, where you essentially have like these chunks of Lumio City that have been altered a little bit, and then the aesthetic of it has been completely changed with like these white glowing buildings and like these sparkly distortion skies and stuff, but it is still essentially just Lumio City, which is definitely kind of a downgrade coming from the other Pokemon DLCs that we've had in the past, where they add a completely like all new area to explore and you get the new Pokemon and everything to capture also, where here you're pretty much just in Lumio City again, but it's just slightly different. So that was definitely pretty disappointing right away. But then really a lot of this DLC is pretty much just more of the same with kind of the base game in terms of what you do in the DLC, which isn't a bad thing because I did enjoy the gameplay loop of the base game, as I talked about that in my review for Pokemon Legends ZA. So you're essentially like opening up these portals into Hyperspace Lumios using Hoopa and then going in there, and you have a couple of tasks that you can do. You can battle Pokemon, you can catch Pokemon, there's some trainers in there sometimes, there's also like side quests that you can do, and then you've got the Rogue Mega Pokemon battles. But you also have like a new aspect that's added on it where you essentially can only be inside of Hyperspace Lumios for a limited time, where you feed one of these donuts to Hoopa to open up the portals to go there, and then the donuts are kind of ticking down in terms of how much time you have remaining inside of hyperspace. So that adds like another aspect that you have to think about when you're kind of in there, because a lot of the stuff that you do there, you have to be efficient now to do it as fast as you can. And also like the Rogue Mega Pokemon battles and stuff too, where you can't just be like stalling around or running around and trying to waste time, because if you don't get to do everything that you want to before the time runs out, you get kicked out of hyperspace and then have to come back and do it all over again. And something that I've seen a lot of people talking about, which I also kind of feel similarly also, is that the DLC is very grindy in the sense where you really have to do a lot of these tasks, get a lot of these points, and also because of the limited time thing now inside of hyperspace, you need to get the right berries and the right resources to craft the right donuts that you need to really be able to take advantage of a longer amount of time. And then also the level boost that you have, which is a cool aspect that I did enjoy with the gameplay, where your Pokemon can go above level 100, so you can feed these donuts to get like a big level increase. And so I did like the added challenge that you got with the level increase above 100 while also having like the limited amount of time that you have inside of hyperspace. But I did feel like that the DLC was kind of very grindy, and a lot of the time you really have to kind of worry about like having the right items so that you can craft the right donuts and going there and trying to do whatever you can to farm items and everything too. So I can kind of understand the people who were saying that they weren't really enjoying it in that sense. But really the highlight of the DLC is of course the brand new Mega Evolutions that were added, as there are a handful of new Mega Pokemon that were never seen before inside of this DLC, so that aspect was pretty cool, but it also kind of does suck because if you want to use these Mega Pokemon, you have to buy the DLC, because as far as I know, there's no way to actually be able to trade Mega Stones, so you can't actually just have like one of your Pokemon hold a Mega Stone for a Pokemon and then trade it to somebody so that they can still Mega Evolve and use that Pokemon. You were able to do that in like Pokemon X and Y. There was no like DLC in that game, but like you could have one of your Pokemon hold a Mega Stone and then trade it to somebody so that they could use that Mega Stone for one of their Pokemon and then have that Mega Evolution, but there is no way to trade Mega Stones inside of Legends ZA, so if you want to use any of these new Mega Pokemon, you have to buy the DLC. And really the thing about this DLC is that with kind of just having a very similar location to Lumio City, the gameplay being very same too, and then also charging essentially what is like half the price of the game for this DLC, it just makes it kind of a tough sell for me to really kind of recommend it to someone. I guess I would just say that if you really enjoy Pokemon Legends ZA, then you're gonna enjoy the DLC also, but if you're somebody who didn't really like it all that much, or you don't really care too much about it, it just makes it really hard to say that you should spend $30 on this DLC, because it is a very high amount of money, I think, and that's where I feel like for what you're getting inside of this DLC, $30 is kind of a tough sell, where maybe if the DLC was like $25 at most, but especially if it was like $20 or $15, I definitely think it would be much easier to recommend the DLC then. But now with my thoughts about the DLC out of the way, what I really want to talk about is what this DLC could potentially mean for the future of Pokemon and DLCs that could be coming later down the line, as I actually feel like that the Mega Dimension DLC might have been a direct response to something that the Pokemon Company and GameFreak had been discussing internally, and that we found out because of the massive GameFreak Terra hack that had occurred. So I'm sure you guys are aware of that massive GameFreak hack that happened, where so much of like the internal documents and all the stuff that was stored on their servers got made public and put online, and a lot of information that wasn't meant to be seen for us did manage to surface, and there had been a lot of discussions internally that the Pokemon Company and GameFreak had been having that came out, but there's been some interesting discussions that have happened for DLC also. And now after seeing Mega Dimension, I feel like maybe that could have actually had some type of connection to it. So here's one of the internal documents that ended up leaking, where you can see right here that it says, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's DLC development ended up going way over budget, costing as much as the entirety of Pokemon Legends Arceus' development. And then they have the quote right here where it says, going forward, we will keep the DLC at an appropriate scale, commensurate with the revenue, and focus on achieving low costs. Now, of course, people like read this as, oh, Game Freak and the Pokemon Company are being even more greedy now. They're trying to make sure that the DLC has less of a budget now and all of that. But like, if we look at the note right here, it says here, it's not just due to greed. They literally mention that if the trend continues, the DLC will cost more to develop than the revenue that they make by selling it, so it's just not sustainable. And it is kind of crazy because if you think about it, the Scarlet and Violet DLC with the teal mask and the indigo disc, if we're talking about that DLC costing as much as the entirety of Pokemon like Arceus' entire like game development for Pokemon Legends Arceus, that's kind of insane that a DLC ended up costing as much as that entire game. And we even have leaked numbers for exactly how the DLC does, because we can see right here, it says, in the first 10 months of release, the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC sold 6.15 million downloads, so 25% of the players bought the DLC, which, I'm not gonna lie, that number is actually much lower than I thought it would be, because I really thought with like Pokemon fans and like the fans that would always buy everything that has a Pokemon logo on it, I really thought like a ton of people would just buy basically the Pokemon DLC as soon as it's available. But the fact that only a fourth of the player base bought the DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, that's actually much lower, because not even half of the players, and of course this is just the first 10 months of release, but I feel like that's basically almost a year, and the first year is really kind of when a majority of people would buy the DLC if they want to. And I feel like if almost close to a year, if only a fourth of the players are buying the DLC, I'm not really thinking that there's going to be many crazy more sales coming after that. So it's just kind of insane because I really thought that at least like half of the people who bought the base game would have also bought the DLC. But now if you're looking at this and then thinking about how they also mentioned how the price of the budget with like the DLC for Scarlet and Violet ended up costing pretty much the exact same as the amount for the entirety of Legends Arceus, you can really see kind of why they would be kind of structuring their DLC now in a different direction. And this is why I think that the Mega Dimension DLC might actually be a response directly to this. If we look at the Mega Dimension DLC and then the other DLCs that we've had in the past with like the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra for Pokemon Sword and Shield, and then the Scarlet and Violet DLC with the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc, I would say that honestly, in my opinion, I think that the Mega Dimension DLC is the worst out of all of these, and I really feel like that this might be kind of a new direction that the Pokemon Company and GameFreak could be thinking when it comes to Pokemon DLC, and I kind of hope that that's not the case, because if you really kind of go back and think about when they even started announcing that they were going to be doing DLC for the first time with like Pokemon Sword and Shield, they really mentioned how the whole idea of this DLC was to be kind of like a replacement for having third versions, where we used to have third versions so often where you had like Pokemon Ruby and then Sapphire, and then you'd have an entire game called Emerald after, or an entire game with like Pokemon Crystal or Pokemon Platinum. But because of this era now of having DLC content, they could just add new content like that without having to sell like Pokemon Sword and Shield and then Pokemon Bow for like $60 later. But now with all of this now and kind of the new direction that they're going with this DLC for Mega Dimension, I don't really know, because I'm kind of wondering if this could potentially happen even with like Generation 10's DLC, because we're obviously going to get Generation 10 in 2026, but 2027 most likely is going to be the year for Gen 10 DLC. But are they now going to be kind of taking a step back in terms of like the scale and how they're going to go about the DLC, with like kind of making it similar to Mega Dimension, or kind of just not really as ambitious or as big as what they did before because of like these internal documents and kind of just seeing how it's not really being super profitable for them? And I know that Pokemon Legends ZA isn't a Switch 2 game, but the reception to the Mega Dimension DLC and how people are feeling about it and how it's kind of mixed and all over the place does kind of remind me of the reception to DLC for a Switch 2 game, and really kind of the other, I guess, major DLC that did come out, which was a paid DLC for a Nintendo game this year, being the DLC for Donkey Kong Bonanza, as Donkey Kong Bonanza also had a DLC which was cheaper. It was $20, but it also was kind of a mixed reception, where I've had people saying that they didn't really like the Donkey Kong Bonanza DLC all that much, and it was kind of similar to Mega Dimension in the sense where it kind of just adds like a different mode to it, where the Mega Dimension DLC kind of added like a roguelike kind of mode with kind of having like the limited time and like kind of the way that you would have to grind and kind of craft different things and stuff. And then the Emerald Rush is kind of like an extra little like mini game mode that they added in Donkey Kong Bonanza, but even the reception to that game's DLC wasn't the best. And I'm really kind of hoping that this isn't like a thing that we see now moving forward, where DLCs for a lot of these games aren't the best. Hoping it's just kind of like a thing that's kind of a coincidence, and really once we start moving into like Generation 10, we start seeing like some of the better DLC again. But like, I don't know, it just feels kind of weird, especially with like the internal Game Freak and Pokemon Company documents coming out too about how they're really feeling about the scale of the DLC and what they think about it moving forward. It does kind of just make me a little bit concerned, and also kind of wondering what they're really going to do with DLC moving forward. But yeah, this is just something that I've been thinking about after playing the Mega Dimension DLC, and I really wanted to talk about it, but I just didn't know exactly how to kind of phrase it correctly and really kind of put my thoughts the best way possible into a video. I tried to do my best inside of this, so maybe you guys can kind of see where I'm coming from in terms of like the Mega Dimension DLC, but also just what it could mean for Pokemon DLC going forward. So hopefully you guys do kind of just understand and see what I mean. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to click that like button and also subscribe to the channel as well. I'm definitely gonna have some more Pokemon videos, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Comment down below and let me know what you think about this. How do you feel about the Mega Dimension DLC? Did you like it? Did you not really like it? And what do you think about the future of Pokemon DLC moving forward? Would you be okay if they're kind of gonna be like these smaller scale DLCs like Mega Dimension, or do you kind of want like the bigger scale DLCs with like new areas and much more to them, like how we got in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield? What do you feel about all of this? Definitely be sure to comment down below and let me know. But if you don't have anything to say about it, just comment your favorite emoji down below for some engagement. I'd really appreciate it. go follow me on Twitter at @Aero so you can be featured in videos, and also join my Discord server as well. We've got a bunch of people in there who are always talking about Pokemon and Smash Bros and Nintendo, so definitely be sure to join that. And with that, that is going to be the final video of 2025. I know it wasn't the most positive and brightest video, but I just wanted to end it here and kind of wrap up 2025 with this topic so that moving into 2026, I've got a lot more exciting things and kind of some cool videos planned that I really want to make. So I hope you guys look forward to those when they come out. But yeah, thank you guys all so much for all of your support this year, and I can't wait to make more videos for you guys in 2026. Thank you so much for watching.